Okay, so this week what we want to do is we want to boot into our virtual machine. And once we're into our virtual machine, we want to actually go onto the browser within our virtual machine and log into Blackboard. From within Blackboard, what we want to do is download a couple files in this week's assignments. So I'm just going to download 3 different files. We're going to be using CodeIgniter this week. CodeIgniter is a framework, and I've uploaded that to Blackboard, along with a default homepage template and a default admin template. So I'm going to download all 3 of these files. Okay, with the files downloaded, I'm just going to open the folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with CodeIgniter. I'm just going to unzip CodeIgniter. I'm just going to right click on it and say extract all. So CodeIgniter is a very popular framework that's used within PHP. And what it does is it brings PHP into an object-oriented style of development, and it gives us very clean separation of concern. So what it does is it uses a design pattern, so that way we can use something called MVC, Model View Controller. And I'll explain that to you once we get this set up. So, okay, I downloaded it. I've got this CodeIgniter, and then I've got a bunch of files in here. I see application, system, user guide, and then some physical files in there. So what I want to do is I'm going to go into my PHP store. I'm going to right click and create a new directory, and I'm going to call this directory site. I'm going to hit OK. So I've got a site folder here, and I'm going to go back over to my folder over here, my CodeIgniter. I'm going to select all of the files, and I'm just going to drag and drop them into the site folder. I'm going to say OK. Okay, so it's uploading them all. So I'm going to go back over to that site folder, the site folder here. Just want to make sure all the files are dragged in. So I'm going to go to my website, and I'm going to go /site. Hit enter. So when I go to the site, it comes up with this default CodeIgniter web page. So when you see this, you know that CodeIgniter is installed correctly. So the way this works is we have an application, system, user guide. Within the application is really where we care. So we've got a lot of stuff going on inside the application. And so when I go to the website, the /site, all right, it's actually running the CodeIgniter application. So in here we've got an index PHP, but really what's happening is it's hooking up to our controllers, and the controller is being selected by the config, and inside the config we have a route. So the route file really is one of the first things that fires off, and it comes down here and it's looking for a specific route. There's a default controller called welcome. So that's going to be the first thing that goes off if we don't specify a specific controller. And we did not specify a specific controller. So the default controller is going to be welcome. So when we look at the controller, we actually have a controller that's called welcome. And then if I take a look at this PHP, it's actually a class, and the class is called welcome. And it's inheriting from the CI controller object, and we've got an index, And then we're loading a view here. So the view, if I go down to my views folder, in here I should see something called welcome message. So then the welcome message, and then this is the page that we're actually seeing right now. So this is the welcome CodeIgniter page. So what it's doing is it's using an MVC design pattern. So the M in MVC is models, and we do have a models folder here which we'll use later. For right now, we don't have any models in there. There are a bunch of index pages. So in all of the folders you'll see an index page. If you look inside there, basically it's just saying access is denied, so it's just a default HTML. But what would really be in there would be maybe a data class, just or a model, a data model. So we would put our models in here. So any type of structure, data structure, we would put inside our models folder. So that's the M. The V is the view. The view is just going to be presentation. And then the controller really is going to be where we're going to put the majority of our code or our business logic. Anything that bridges model data and has to pass that down to the view, that all gets handled inside the controller. So the MVC is something that's common within a lot of different languages. You'll notice it when you're working with like Microsoft.NET. They've moved to a MVC. Sometimes they call it an MVVM design pattern. And it's just the VVM is more creating view models that will be specific for your view. So we're gonna start using this design, and we're just gonna start working on it. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. I've got my application, I've got my system. Both of those I need. My user guide, I don't need. So I'm just going to delete the user guide. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. And I'm just going to keep my index.php. I'm going to delete everything else. So not to get confused with this PHP, right now I'm currently working on the site. All right, that's outside of the site folder. Currently working on the site. Inside here I've got my application, and I've got my system, and I've got my index. So what I want to do is inside my views, I'm going to create a new folder in here. And I'm going to call it public. And then I'm going to create another folder called admin. Okay, so I'm going to just close these down a little bit. So what I want to do is I actually want to get my other files that I downloaded. So if I go to my download folder, okay, so I've got CodeIgniter installed. That's good. As long as you can see this default page, then you know it's installed. And really all we did was unzipped all of the files into our site folder and got that going. So I've got my home page here. I'm going to double click on that. And actually I'm going to unzip that, so I'm just going to right click and extract all. I'm going to go inside here. Okay, so I've got my index, I've got a license and a readme. For right now I'm just going to get rid of both of those. So I'm just going to delete those. So the index is the website, and then these are all assets for the website. My CSS, my fonts, my images. So what I want to do is I want to create another folder. I'm going to actually go back up to my site level. I'm going to close the site. I'm going to reopen the site. So I have application, I have system. Within my site folder, I want to create a new file, a new folder. In the folder, I'm just going to call it assets, just so I can put all that CSS and images and all of that inside an assets folder. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to create an assets folder here. And then what I want to do is I want to be able to drag all of the assets into that folder. So my CSS, font awesome, fonts, images, JavaScript, the JS, all those go inside the assets folder. So I'm just going to drag and drop those there. Okay, so now I've got my index. So from here, I'm going to go inside my application, and I want to go inside my views, and I want to go inside my public. So I want to drag that file into my public folder. So at this point, this template is completely empty. All right, so I'm gonna just get rid of my homepage folder. I'm gonna get rid of the homepage zip file. And for right now, I'm just gonna stay with the homepage. I'll get the admin later. So inside that public folder, it's an index.html. Well, I want to rename this. I'm just gonna call this thing. I'm just gonna go to rename. And I'm just going to call it home.php. I want it to be a PHP page, so that way we can do more advanced things with it. Okay, so I've got my home page. So if I come here, I can't really route directly to that home page. I really need to rework the code here, and I want to make it my code anyways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my controller, and I've got a welcome.php. I'm just going to rename this. So if I go to my refactor, go to rename, I'm just going to call it home.php. And then if I open up the home.php, this class name, I'm going to rename the class name to home as well. So that's the class of the controller. And I've got an index, which is going to be, if I don't specify a function, it will go to index. And then the view that it's going to load is going to be here. So if I go to my views, I need to first go to my public. So I'm going to just go public / and then I'm going to call it home. And the reason I'm calling it home is because inside public is my home view. So I've got a view and I've got a controller. On my controller, I've got a controller called home, and then I have a default constructor, which means if I don't specify a method, it will go to my index. So the way CodeIgniter works is it looks at my URL, and I can create a controller. Like for right now, I created a controller called home. So I could specify home, and then inside the home controller, I could call a method. And then if I wanted to pass something into that method, I could then pass something in like a name. So that would be the argument, that would be the method, that would be the controller. So that's the way this works. So it's very similar to what we were kind of dealing with Slim. CodeIgniter has it just built a little bit more for commercial websites. Okay, so I hit refresh and it's giving me a 404 page. The reason it's giving me a 404 page is because the very first thing it's doing is it's hitting the route, and the route is in my configuration. So if I go into my config and I take a look at my route, my default route here is going to welcome. Well, welcome doesn't exist anymore. We got rid of that class. We actually renamed the class to home. So if I save this and if I refresh, okay, it's a crappy looking website, but it's there. So all of our styles and everything aren't attached yet. And that's because the CSS and everything is in a different directory. And currently we don't know how to path to that. So we got to figure that out. But we did get to our page. I see a landing page. I see some stuff in here. So at least we know the very first thing it hits is the route. The route says go to home. All right. The home is the home controller. So it's saying use the home controller. So then we're done with the config. And then we go to our controllers and we find the home. And then within the home controller, now we have all of the different methods. Now we don't have all the different methods. We only have one, and that's the default method. So if we didn't specify a method or an argument, then it's going to load our default view. So we load the public home view. So within the views, there's a public, and then there's a home. So that's all good. So what I want to do now is I need to somehow figure out how to path to our assets folder. So we've got this assets folder here, and we need to figure out how to path to that. So one way of doing this is we can actually create a helper. They're called helper methods. They're just little methods that you can create that will help you out, just do simple things. So what I want to do is I want to figure out what is my base level URL. Specifically here, I want to know, is my base level, 10.4.IP address /site. So this would really be my base level, so that's where I want to get to. So that way I can figure out how to path that in. So within this helpers folder, I'm just going to create a new file. And it's going to be a PHP file, and I'm just going to call this thing utility_helper.php. Okay, so I need to make a PHP script block here, because I need PHP. And I'm going to create a PHP function, and the function is going to basically return the URL for my assets. So I'm just going to create the function. And you're going to want to name it asset_URL. Opening, closing, parens, and then the curly braces. And then what we're going to be returning out of the asset URL method is a string. And it's going to be our base URL. So it's going to be base. And then what I want to do off the base URL method, oops, I'm going to do a B. The base URL method, I want to concatenate on our folder. So we have a folder called assets. And a forward slash. And that's this folder. So give me the base, and then I'm going to concatenate onto the base my assets. So that should work. So now we have a helper. We want to be able to use this helper within the application. So we need to actually load that. So inside our configuration, we want to go to the auto load. And the auto load loads up a lot of different things when the website runs. And then in here we should have a little helpers array. So we've got packages, we've got libraries, we've got drivers, config, languages, models. Oop, there's helper. Okay, so we've got an auto load helper. So we're gonna give the helper a name and a file. So it's going to be URL. It's going to be our helper, and it's going to be utility. Okay, so then that should automatically load up this helper. So the auto load helper is going to automatically tie in, and it's going to load this function into PHP. So what we can do now is from our view, if I go to my view now, and I'm going into my public view, I'm going into the home PHP. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to see if I can access the function called asset URL. Asset URL, it's good, it popped up. So I'm just going to save this. I'm going to come back over here and refresh. Okay, so I've got a path now going to my assets folder that I created. So what I can do is I'm going to copy this, I'm going to cut it, I'm going to highlight it and get it into my clipboard, and then I'm going to do a Control F, and I'm going to specifically look for href. So there's like CSS href. So right in front of the C in CSS, I'm just going to paste, and that's going to paste in the URL that we're going to be using. Got another CSS. Font awesome that we put that in there. Now this one, fully qualified path, don't have to worry about it. It's only the ones that we copied into our asset folder that we need to worry about. So I'm just going to hit my down arrow. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of hyperlinks, the ahref hyperlinks going to websites and stuff like that. I don't care about. I'm really cared about the ones that are just the links. Not a links, but here like the actual link tag where we're using. So I think we're good with the href. We also have src, or source. Okay, so both of these script files are using fully qualified. Nothing we need to worry about. Oh, I typed in. So I'm getting there. I actually meant to type in src, and I typed in scr, but it got me here. So I'm going to paste this for my JavaScripts. But I still need to do it because I have images and stuff, and that's a source, src. So this is what I was really looking for. Source. Okay, so here's an image. All right, we need to path that to our img folder. So I need my asset. Go next. Here's another image. I'm going to paste that. Okay, I think we're good. So if I save this, now we should be completely mapped out to our assets. So if I come over here and refresh, oh, that looks better. All right, so we've got a home page. So this is going to be our marathon homepage. We're going to have to rework it. It's Bootstrap. When it says Bootstrap, I see menus here. If I click on the menus, I can move around between my app. But if I like collapse it down, like a mobile phone or something that would be, you know, a tablet or something like that, I would have a different type of menu. So the menu would drop down how you'd expect it to be on a mobile phone. So that's what Bootstrap will do for us. So Bootstrap is a great framework. I love it. Use it everywhere. And we'll get used to laying things out. The good thing with starting with a Bootstrap template like this is you can really get a good idea how people are doing, like the columns and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so at this point, we are using our default controller for everything, which is great. But I want to create another controller for my admin area. So I'm going to close up all my tabs because right now everything seems to be functioning all right. Okay, so I'm going to go back inside my application. I'm going to go into my controller, my home. I'm going to copy the home. I'm just going to go copy. And then I'm just going to paste it inside the controllers. Paste. And instead of home, I'm going to call it admin. And then the class here is going to be called admin. And for right now, I'm going to leave it still pointing to home. So what I want to do is I want to get the admin controller to kick me to our existing home page. So I'm going to save that. So if I come back over here, I should be able to just have site/admin. If I hit enter, nothing is found. So it's not finding the controller, but just like with Slim, I think that if I did an index.php/admin, that brings me here. So we fixed this with Slim by using that htaccess file, and then we were able to basically do URL rewriting and just remove that index. That's what I want to do. So that way I can have friendly URLs and I can start to dynamically create the URLs. We're going to do more of that. So for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to go back into my CodeIgniter. And before I get too far, I'm going to just collapse everything up. I'm going to go inside my API. I'm actually going to close that. And then inside my API version 1, I have an htaccess file. I'm just going to copy that because we already solved this. I'm just going to do a copy. And then I'm going to paste it inside the site folder. So right here inside the site folder, I'm just going to do a paste. I'm going to leave the name the same. So then we've got an htaccess file. And really my goal, same goal here, I want to get rid of that index.php. The only thing I really need to do is I just need to change API to site. And I need to delete the version 1 /. So I'm just putting /site/. And if I save this, if I did everything right, I should be able to come back over here, hit refresh, everything works, all right, which I would have expected it to. If I remove the index.php, go back to what I had before, hit enter, and it works. Okay, so at this point we know that htaccess file is now successfully doing the rewriting. which now gives us the ability to create URLs dynamically. We could even do them through database queries and all kinds of crazy stuff. But at this point, we're good. We're good. So we got admin. So what I want to do is I want to close this down, and I want to go inside my assets. So I've got my CSS, Font Awesome fonts. So I'm going to go back over to my downloads, and I've got admin left. So I'm going to double click on admin. And then actually I'm just going to right click and extract all. So I've got the same thing where I've got my CSS, Font Awesome, my fonts, and my JS. So if I drag my CSS right into my assets, it's saying it won't let me do that because the file already exists, or the folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go inside the CSS folder, and I'm just going to grab all of the CSS files, and I'm going to drag all the CSS files into the CSS folder. I say OK, and then I'm going to overwrite all. Alright, so if we have a file that already exists, we're just going to overwrite it, which in the real world we'd have to be a little careful just to make sure, because we really could mess things up. At this point we're starting fresh, so I don't really care. We'll figure out the style and get everything looking good. So CSS is copied. Font Awesome we don't need to copy just because that library is the same. I'm going to copy the fonts over. Just going to drag and drop the fonts in. And then the JavaScript, I'm going to do the JavaScript as well. Okay, so that's really good. So at this point, all of this stuff has been uploaded to the server inside the assets folder, so I'm just going to delete that. Maybe I won't. Okay, so I've got I'm going to go to my view. So I'm going to go back inside the application, and then I'm going to go to my views, and then I've got my admin here. So inside my admin, I'm just going to drag some of these files. I've got a blank page, got a Bootstrap Essentials, charts, forms, index, index RTL. I'm just going to drag all of these inside the admin folder. And then I'm going to also grab the tables and drag that into the admin folder. Now I don't know which ones we're going to use, if we're going to use them all. For right now, I'm just going to bring them over there so that way we can take a look at them. The index.html is going to be the first one that I'm going to work with. I just want to get this thing working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this index, and I'm going to rename it. And I'm just going to call it home.php. Okay, so my home.php is going to be my landing page. So if I look at my controller, my admin controller, and then instead of going public home, what I want to do is I want to go admin home. So if I refresh the admin page, okay, so we're getting closer. So we got to do the same thing again with the admin page that we did with the home page and the public. and that is add this asset URL. So I'm just going to do a Control F, a find. All right. And I'm going to look for SCR. Oh, SRC, I did that again. Okay, so that's external. That's external, starts with an HTTP, so it's going out to the web. That's fully qualified, starting with an HTTP, that's fine. Okay, so here we've got some JavaScript, some JS, so I need to paste the helper method in to all of these. Okay, so that's good. And then we're going to do an href. Okay, so we've got a lot of hrefs here. And none of them, at this point, seem to be anything I want. Okay, so I think all the hrefs are fine. So I'm just going to save this. And then I'm going to come back over to the website and I'm going to refresh. Just going to paste this up here. I'm going to see if I can see the asset URL. Okay, so I see it. Oh, so I didn't get these. Huh. I don't know how I missed that. So there were some HTTPs that needed to be dealt with. Okay, so I'm just going to save that and try that again. There we go, that's what I wanted. Did I delete that off the top? I did not. There we go. All right. Okay, so the admin, I've got the dashboard. If I click on it, there's not going to work. I can only just go to the admin. But I can see I've got my style in here. It's pulling in the graphics. It's doing what we want to do. So we want to make a back end for our customers to log into, but we also want to have a front end. So this is going to be our front end website. And then somewhere in here we'll have a login, so that way they can log in. After they log in, we'll kick them over to the back end admin area. For right now, I'm just going to leave it open so that way we can move back and forth. So we've got two different fonts, or two different templates that we're using. One is our admin dashboard, and the other one's our public-facing website. Both Bootstrap, both heavy CSS and dynamic with the layouts and views. We're also using CodeIgniter for routing. And at this point, you know, we're just getting familiar with Bootstrap, so don't freak out if you don't know it that well. We'll figure Bootstrap out. Bootstrap just is a design style. We'll go deeper into Bootstrap. It's something that you will eventually get used to, and it's actually really nice when you get used to it. And same with CodeIgniter. CodeIgniter is just a different way of managing your websites. The URL, basically we pass in admin. This is a name of a controller. Now I'm not specifying a specific function, so after this would be a function. And then you pass in, different arguments into a function, data. So this is the way it works. Now we don't have a function called function, so we're not able to pass data into the function, but we do have a controller called admin. So admin is this controller. So the very first thing that happens is it looks to see if there's a controller in there. So if we look, the very first thing comes in here. It says, do you have a controller admin? Yes, I do. And it's really the class name is what it's looking for. Once it finds that class name, then if I had a / function, then it would be looking for a function called function. It would be looking for something. Since I didn't specify it, I just said admin. It's automatically just going to load up the home. So this is CodeIgniter. It's definitely different than what we've done up to this point, but this is what we're going to be using for the remainder of the semester. And hopefully you find this useful.